I'm just going to go over some old Ruby, take you back to Ruby land, which I will do a couple of times during Mod 3. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to require these files. They should seem fairly familiar to you, especially this one, right? BFF. All it's going to do is this, right? It's going to say, hey, I'm going to take a quick nap, and I'm going to run this sleep function. What sleep does is it's going to take an argument, and it's going to wait literally that long. So sleep 5 says, I'm just going to take a 5-minute little nappy poo, 5-second rather, 5-second nappy poo, and then I'm going to continue running the rest of this function. And that is, cool, I woke up from this nap, right after the sleep, and then I'm going to make a GET request. Here is that GET request. Some of you have used this in Mod 1 during your CLI to hit an API, or you did it during the Star Wars API. Remember that? All those weeks ago? Whoa, right? Cool, and all I'm doing is I'm saving the return of this method, and then I'm going to do some stuff. Right? Has anyone ever actually, let's drop a little binding pry here, taken a quick peek at what this gives you back? Let's do that. How do I run this again? Oh, Ruby, the file name, right? Sync. Cool. So exactly as promised, I'm going to take this quick nap. I'm going to sleep for 5 seconds, and then I'm going to wake up, and then I'm going to make this GET request. Did any of this code run while the sleep was running? No, absolutely not. It is what is known as blocking. Why would it be called blocking? Any ideas, John? Yes, right? Nothing else can execute while this is running because Ruby is a synchronous programming language. What that means is it will run everything top to bottom, left to right. And so if it runs this, it waits until this is done before it will run this. Cool? So we are now in this binding pry, which also is blocking, right? Because does the rest of the code run while I'm in this pry? Absolutely not. Negative, Batman, ceasefire, freeze. Let's take a look real quick at line 14. Do I have access to Ron Swanson quotes? Absolutely. Cool. Oh, thank you for that amazing response. Huh. That's weird. What is that? I can always type of it. Haha, JavaScript joke, right? No, not funny. I check the class, and it is a REST client response object. Do I have access to what this is? The actual response, like what should be coming back from this? Well, I could tell by this very aptly named variable that I should be getting some sort of Ron Swanson quote, right? I'm making a GET request, which are different from post, put, patch, delete, to this URL. So how can we do a GET request with this URL, not in Ruby, not in JavaScript, but in the browser? Amazing. And here, and there it is. That's basically what that response should be, right? What I have here, and I recommend all of you get it, is a Chrome package, and it's called JSON Formatter. Because if I did not have it, it would look like this. Actually, that's not even that bad. Yeah, you need one that's gross. Do you guys know one that's gross off the top of your head? Does Reddit give it to you in a gross way?
Yeah, reddit.com.
Yeah. This one, right? Yeah, okay. I think this one gives it to you in a gross way. This is the parsed, and then if I hit raw, yeah, gross. You're not getting anything out of this. Right? This is what your code looks like when you do not indent. And then when you indent, and you're like, whoa. Game changer. Right? If you do not indent your code and you walk up to me and you say, please help me, I don't know how this is working, and I cannot debug it, I will say, me neither. Format your code. Great. So this is the response I'm looking to get, right? This array of this one string. Cool? So here back in the terminal, it almost looks like it's trying to give it to me, but it's in this REST client response-like object. We talked about how we have a particular language agnostic type of data that we can host on the internet, and that it doesn't matter if I'm going through Ruby or through JavaScript, I should be able to see and read this data. What was that? Yes, it was JSON, right? So what can I do to parse this JSON object? Right? I could just run json.parse, very good, right? I'm not trying to trick you, please. That's other instructor styles. Back chain. Shots fired. So, Mike's the best. So, oh, that's it right there. That's exactly what it is that I was looking for, right? That should match what the response I believe it to be, right? I'm going to get back this JSON, and I have to make sure I JSON.parse it in Ruby to make sure I get and can read what it is that I actually want. Are there any questions on why I needed to parse the JSON after I did the get client, the REST client.get? Pretty straightforward. Yes? Yes. Head nods.
The classes never changed, or is it still?
V good. Question? Comment? Concern?
Is that a function within that the Chrome browser gives you, or does JavaScript give you?
Which,
JSON function in JavaScript.
you mean JSON.parse?
Yeah.
JSON?
No, I'm talking about when you're doing this in JavaScript. The JSON, like in the examples that JSON.
Does anyone else understand the question?
It's like the curly.
You talking about the method.
Yeah, the method.
The method comes from JavaScript.
It comes from JavaScript.
It comes from me.
Yeah, sorry.
Cool.
Sorry, yeah.
No, you cool, man.
Yeah, I was talking about the specific method in JavaScript. If it was from JavaScript or the Chrome browser gave you.
Cool. It's JavaScript. So here, right, you're requiring JSON. And so then now I can use JSON.parse. And so, great. So the rest of this, right, if I remove the binding, what do you think will happen? I will have stored and saved the response from this, which is just that REST client object. And then I can store it again after I've parsed it, tell you that I've parsed it, and then print that parse code. Cool? Is there any questions as to what you think will happen? You can, right? So let's run it again. Actually, you saw it right there. What's cholesterol, right? Bloop, 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 bloop. Man, what a terrible experience, this waiting. Great job, everyone. The reception will be held in each of our individual homes alone. Cool. So, was that a good user experience that I can basically write code that will run, that will block the rest of my code from running? No. Wouldn't it be nice if I had to run some sort of function that it would happen in the background and then come back later? You piecing together why that event loop is really important? Cool. So let's do this exact same thing in JavaScript. Cool. A while loop is known as blocking in the same way that the sleep does. Cool. So there's no such thing as sleep. All right, I just need these for later. There's no such thing as sleep in JavaScript. Sleep is for chumps in Ruby. Not really. So we made our own, cool, which is called function sleep. It takes in a number, like however long you want to sleep. You're going to set some sort of standard, like starting variable. And so while I is less than whatever number we wind up putting in, right, 12 to the 8th power times n, it's just going to give us sort of like a decent round to like seconds. And then I++ all the way. Cool? So this while loop should be blocking for some random number of seconds. Don't worry about what 12 to the 8th power is. It's fine. It's not really important. The important thing here is that the while loop is blocking. If I run the sleep, it's going to be running this function for a unspecified amount of time. Why would I want to be emulating something like this in regards to your network requests, right? The REST client.get. Can I predict how long that will take? Right. I can't predict reliably when my network request will come back, right? So I'm going to run this sleep as sort of like this pseudo, like, who knows what time it will come back function, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to log, run sleep, log again. And I have this event listener doing what? Mm-hmm.
And then on that, listening for a click.
Right. And it's referencing console log because it would be different if I invoked it, right? So I'm going to pass it a reference to function. So let's take a look at that index.html just so we can compare them side by side. All right. I'm trying to get this click button ID. Let's find that real quick in our HTML. Powerful. And then I'm going to add an event listener for click. And then I'm going to log whatever it is that I click once I click this button. Are there any questions so far as to what should be happening inside my code? All right? Pretty good at event handlers at the moment? Great. So let's take a look.
Hold on, that's parentheses at the end. You deleted it by accident after a lot.
Oh, good looks. Thank you. Airborne. What now? Someone said there's something else I have to do?
No. Just reverse.
Oh, that's funny to you, huh? My joke? Am I a joke to you? Hilarious meme of 2018. Great. So, this is what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to refresh this page, take a look at the logs, and then just listen to this loud, obnoxious clicking I'm about to do, and you tell me what is happening. I will bring up the code side by side. Here, what should I see when I refresh? Starting the sleep function. And then?
It's going to sleep for 10 seconds.
Cool, and then?
And then it's going to log, wow, that sleep function took forever to run. 1 star.
1 star, right? Mind you, this listener is listening for the clicks, right? So let's do that. I'm going to refresh and then listen for the clicks. Cool? Did you see that? Did any of these clicks register while that sleep function was running?
No. Big net lagging.
1 star review, right? Your website sucks. Here's what's going on. If you remember from the event loop video, this right here is known as the global execution context. That just makes sense because, I mean, there's nothing here indenting, right? It's on the global object. So in the global execution context, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to define this function. It's going to execute this console log, and then it's going to execute this sleep, which is going to be in the while loop, which is blocking. That sleep function is going to run. Then this will, what? Execute. All of my clicks, are they being registered, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. When do I see them, though?
After the while loop.
After the while loop, right? So we can all agree that this is just a terrible user experience, right? Like if there was more stuff on the page, I can't even scroll. Who remembers back in the 90s when your website would load that your scroll would freeze? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That does not happen anymore. Why? All right, I'm kind of leading you to this idea that synchronous execution of your code can lead to potentially a poor user experience. And so what we want to do, right, what we want to do is something that I've showed you guys already, that Airbnb, that Twitter. Do you want me to show you again, or you kind of like have this idea where I can scroll to the bottom, and then once I'm there, I can make JavaScript magic and then append more to the page, right? Does that block my experience at the time, or is that request running in the background? Well, if it was not running in the background, could I do anything else on the page while it's trying to get that data? No, because that would be blocking, right? So JavaScript is a synchronous programming language that is non-blocking. And the way we achieve that is through asynchronous requests. Are there any questions on why JavaScript is, although it's a synchronous programming language, is considered non-blocking? Can anyone explain what non-blocking would be? Come on, just nothing? Y'all tired from lunch? Sleepy? Damn, sure. Go for it.
Allow multiple processes to go on, or process in the background in the file. If you mean specific to JavaScript or just in general?
Just specific to JavaScript.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, it allows the stack to do its thing while there's another process going on over here, specifically web requests. So you can have two things going on.
Exactly. So what he said was that while this code is running, what if I wanted to do something and this sleep function happened in the background? That would stop these logs and these clicks from being blocked, from being registered, from creating that user experience, right? So let's do this request, the same REST client request from Ruby in JavaScript. You all did the discussion questions at nauseum, at length, right? How do I make a request, a network request in JavaScript? Sweet, walk me through it. Fetch, right? And I'm gonna get my Ron Swanson quotes. And what do I just fetch it up? Is the argument of fetch. So right here immediately, the first thing I want you to notice is, what does fetch look like to you? A function that is being it is being invoked, it's being called, right? Because I'm putting the bananas there. Haven't heard me say it in a long time, right? So this is a reference to fetch. Fetch is being invoked. Cool? And I'm simply just throwing the bananas on and adding an argument about where I want to go and fetch. Are these the only arguments fetch takes? No. What other possible argument do you think fetch would need to know about? Okay, sure, parameters. What else? Specifically, let's take a look back at Ruby. I have a REST client dot get. I need to know if this fetch is going to be doing a get, put, patch, post, delete, right? So how can I tell it? Do I tell it outside the function to make sure it does, hey, do that get? I have to tell fetch inside as an argument, right? Method is going to be get. Do you guys need this? No, we're cool? The HTML? Are there any questions as to what this is doing? So I've seen some wacky stuff where you'll think that you attach a method over here after the fetch and tell it that it's going to be a get after the fetch starts. It's kind of weird, right? Like inside the fetch should be the get. Cool? Yes, sir.
Get though, isn't that the default method of fetch? Like you don't actually have to put method get.
100%. What he said was, do I have to put method get? No, because get is the most common type of request. It is the default. I do not need to tell it to get. But if I needed to change the method, I will have to include it. Cool? So you will see it frequently like this, but for the sake of this lesson, for the sake of learning, for the sake of like intro to Ajax, I'm going to leave it so you can kind of see that syntax and understand that it takes a second parameter. And what should we do now that we've written brand new code that we're not 100% sure what it does. Absolutely. Cool. Let's console log it. So smart. Also because I beat it into your heads. Which is good though, right? What does the log do on a fetch? I'm sorry, what should I see from the console log on a fetch? Actually, let's get rid of the sleep. That would have been terrible. That would have been a bad user experience, right? Embarrassing. Any thoughts? Promise. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about promises today and what they are and how they're useful. Cool? Very good. So there's a couple things about promises, right? A couple bad jokes, and that is promises are forever, right? And we'll learn what that means. And never break a promise chain. Cool? We will learn never break a promise chain tomorrow, but promises are forever today. That joke is terrible, and no one ever laughs. So, great. Now that I've thoroughly embarrassed myself, let's take a look at what to do. Inside this promise, I see a status, right? Right now it's pending, but inside the status it says resolved. Interesting. This is the response. So this promise has this value as a response. Status, okay. Cores you'll learn about and then hate. And the URL that I send it to. Well, this is just the attributes, the properties of this fetch. It returns a promise. So, as we've talked about, this fetch is going to be asynchronous. Meaning, if I were to do a console log here and say, this is definitely after the fetch, right? Are there any arguments here? This is definitely after the fetch. Which should I see first? I should see starting the sleep function. Wow, that sleep function took forever. 1 star. This log, and then this log, right? That makes sense. It's synchronous, top to bottom, left to right. Right? Now shaking your heads at me. It's because you watched the video and did the discussion question. Huh? What's happening? Why did this come back first? Oh, not so smart now. I'll tell you why. I'll just tell you why. Oh, you got yeah? Yeah, what's up?
I was going to say the promise is going to be there immediately, whether or not the data has been returned yet.
Yes, 100%. So this console log is a function that's being invoked, and this fetch right here, this fetch gets called. How do I stop this blocking action in JavaScript? Let me draw it out for you in a fun, cool way. Awesome web app, something like that? Awesome web app. Is it like this? This could be terrible. Okay. I think it's something like, what was that website where I can draw things? No. There's that web. Oh, God. Awesome whiteboard, or what was it? AWW app? Okay, cool. That's what it is. Thank you. Embarrassing. Thanks for the assist. 10 points to Gryffindor. So here we have a visual representation of what is known as the call stack. When I say that, am I confusing anybody? Can somebody explain what I mean by the call stack? Absolutely, right? So what he said was this is just a data structure known as a stack. And just like a stack of pancakes, can I eat the middle pancake without removing the top pancake? Because if you know how, I would love to know. That is absolutely incredible. So when JavaScript runs your code, the first thing that gets placed on a call stack, right? And why do we call it the call stack? because this is what is being invoked in your JavaScript, right? All your JavaScript code is executing. So the first thing that gets put on there is the global. What I mean by that is the second I run line 1, and there could be nothing here, the global execution starts. Right? Sure. Window is different. Windows with the browser, the global execution is going to be JavaScript. They almost look the same, and we can get into, in like a breakout session, how they're different later. But right now, the second it reads line 1, it starts. The global execution context starts. And then when it gets to line 4, it'll say, oh great, I'm going to define this function. Did I execute it yet? No. 16, I'm going to execute. Cool? So I have all these functions that are defined here. And all I'm going to do, rut-row. All I'm going to do is, I'm going to invoke this function. It gets put on the call stack. Look at this F. Fancy for function, right? And then that function is going to run. It's going to do its thing. And then what? Once it hits the end of the function, or it sees a return keyword, it effectively pops off the call stack. Until the function, when it's invoked, hits a return or the end of that function, this cannot execute. Does that make sense? And then this one executes. And then it'll do the same thing. This function gets put on the call stack, and then it'll run. This should seem fairly familiar to you from that JavaScript Weird Parts video, right? Cool.
And the global is staying there because it's functioning the whole time? Or?
Because I haven't hit the end of my JS file,
Oh.
right? So if, however, these functions were nested inside, right? What I mean by that is, let's do this. Can I just do const nested equals to a function, and then I can take no arguments like the champ that I am, and then inside it will return another function, right? Or it could possibly receive what is known as a callback. Then can it execute that callback? Right. While it is executing this callback, what is the lexical scope of the callback function? Because inside, while it's being invoked, the execution context is in here, inside the nested function. If that is happening, and these are being called, invoked, the first function gets put on the call stack, right, as this little block. And then if this function gets invoked inside this function, it gets put on the call stack. This is because this function did not finish executing. And I'm invoking another function on the call stack. All of these block the next thing from running until this hits the return, it pops off, and then this one finishes, and then it pops off the call stack. In which case, the last function can finally get on the call stack. Are there any questions on the call stack and how JavaScript runs? Should be a fairly fast review of what you should understand about JavaScript. Yes, sir.
Visualizing the call stack, unless functions are nested, there should only be
That function on the call stack.
and then the one above it.
Correct. Unless they are nested or they're being invoked with a callback. All right? That make sense? Yeah.
Is this a first in, last out model?
100%. Right? First in, last out, meaning the global context was the first one in. Everything gets put on top of it and then pops off, and then this is the last to come out. Cool? If you did not understand like philo, then don't worry about it. It's just like an economics term, and people want to sound smart. Cool? So, that being said, wouldn't it be nice if right? Because remember, what did I say about fetch in regards to what it is? Is it an array? Is it an object? Is it a function? Is it a string? Fetch is a function, right? So I'm going to put f here. That's so fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's never going to happen. And on Wednesdays, we wear pink, right? On this fetch request, right, I execute it right here on line 24. Fetch gets put on the call stack, right? Can anything else run while the fetch is going? Not really, but what if the fetch gets on the call stack, the second it gets on there, it returns a promise? What happens to the fetch? It returns a promise and pops right off the call stack and jumps into the event loop, where it will actually do the request in X amount of time, get the data, and then get put on the event queue, right? The video. The web API handles the actual request, puts it in the event queue, and then waits until the call stack is empty. And then from the event queue, right, this is E for event, it will come back and return that data. So far, so good. Are there any questions on why the fetch pops off immediately and does not block the rest of the execution of your code? Can anyone else explain why? Raise your hand if you feel comfortable explaining why fetch does not block the execution of your JavaScript. I need to know. Otherwise, I will start over and explain it. Stop playing. Right? Why fetch does not block your code. One more time, super fast. Fetch gets put on the call stack. The second it's there, it pops off because it returns. And it returns a promise. A promise you can think of is an empty object that is simply exactly what it sounds like in English. I'm going to give you data. Don't worry. I promise I will come back. Not 100% true, but we'll get into those exceptions later, right? Once it pops off the call stack because it returned, the rest of your code will run. This, when it popped off the call stack, actually enters, well, the web API where it'll do the network request and then enter the event loop. The event loop will wait until the call stack is empty, then come back in. Cool? So, fetch, does it block? Yes or no?
No.
Very good. Cool? All good? Airborne. Yes.
Does the event loop have its own stack?
Yes.
Is it the same event, like the listening event we're talking about, or a different event?
Is
Like for the listening for events, it's also called event.
correct. Correct. This event loop here is also anything you listen to, right? So on the click, all the clicks will pop up here. And then they will come up here, and then come up here, and then come up here. Cool? So if you remember in that video, he had like 30 clicks, and then they kind of all stacked in the event loop, and then each click registered. Except the clicks are so fast registering, it doesn't look like it's doing a queue. Are there questions on async in regards to just the fetch? Yeah.
So it's not just fetch that
Does async. It's not just fetch that does
makes
async.
any request to the DOM, any like.
There are asynchronous functions.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones that will do that. And we'll go over a few of them. Cool? Actually, a couple. There's fetch, and then there's set timeout. Both come from the browser. Cool? And there's a couple other ones, but if you need them, I will talk to you about them offline. Yeah? Great. Let's get back into this. I have this fetch. So this fetch immediately returned the promise so that the console log returned the promise, and then it moved here. That's why it came in that order. Cool? Now, there is a very special method that we can attach to this fetch, and that is I need to wait for this fetch to resolve, get the data, and then give it back to me. Cool? What would I want to name that method?
Then.
Then, right? Here you will often see method chaining. And do you remember how I talked about how JavaScript will read your code? Where it is space agnostic. It does not care about your spaces. So is there a difference between this and this? So this and this. No, right? So what that means is, actually maybe, but what that means is I can simply have a return and call it here. This is for readability. All right, so when you see the dot then, like in the next line, I'm actually calling the dot then on this fetch function. Cool? I'm just putting it on the next line because I'm going to write a lot of junk code in it, and it can get real messy trying to make it one sexy line. Cool? Just know that this dot then is not being called on air. It's being called on the fetch, and I'm chaining it to the fetch. All right? Do you remember like Ruby method chaining? Like it was all the rage. Okay? Cool. Right? So this dot then is going to receive what? It's going to receive the response from what this evaluates to. So here I can simply say response. Right? This is the response that it's going to get. Sorry, it's going to get a callback. I'm used to the arrow syntax. Ugh. It's going to get a response. Okay, I'm going to lose that. And then I'm just going to space it out for readability's sake. It's just going to get a callback, and it's going to receive the response from this fetch. Cool? What's the first thing I should do? Thank you. All right, you guys have great answers in lecture. Please do this as you really code, and during the code challenge, this is the way to go, yeah? So, what is the response actually going to be from this fetch? What was it in Ruby? It was the response object. Do you remember? The REST client response object. Oh, crap. Where am I missing this? This closes, this closes. I think I added an extra one here like an idiot. There we go. Cool. It's the response object, right? Do I have actually what I need in here? I don't. So naturally, what do you think this response came back as? What did it come back in Ruby as? It came back as a language agnostic piece of data that I then needed to run JSON.parse. Do you remember? Cool. So naturally, I would also, in this fantastic language agnostic piece of data, because I'm doing the same thing if I'm getting the response in Ruby or in JavaScript, I should what? I should take that response and parse it to JSON, right? Is this good? Everyone's cool with this? This is good? Is it though? Is it though? Thank you. This will bite you all the time, right? What does this fetch return to? That's a tricky question, right? This dot then is running a callback. So when I return, what does it return to? Does the return go back into this fetch? It's tricky, right? So let's think. I have this callback, I'm in the event loop, and I'm returning. I don't know, let's find out. Ooh. Does not come up on the console because I didn't log it. Can I log this fetch now? What will I get? Yes, I still get that promise object because when I logged it fetch immediately returns the promise. So now it's tricky. How do I actually get the data? Well, I know for a fact that I literally just parse that data. And I know that .then is a very special callback function that I can use on fetch. Can I then just wait until that then is done and get the return from this then, which will be a parsed JSON object. I'm just naming this wherever I want. I can put hot dog in here if I wanted to. Shout out to Chrome Boy. Right? I can put anything I want, but I'm going to explicitly name it parsed JSON object because I return this response, and now this then gets it. Cool? So in this then, right, just like the first one, takes a callback, and it receives the right, parse JSON object. Can I console log the, let's take a look. There it is.
So the second then automatically gets the parse JSON. I mean, it automatically kind of inherits that return from the first then.
Yes, the second then will inherit the return from the first then. In that exact same methodology, the third then will receive, oh, whoops, that would have broke some code. Whoa, getting crazy here. We'll receive what? It will receive whatever this returns. So for example, if I were to, let's just do it. Let's return some hot dogs, right? It doesn't really matter what this comes back as. Whatever this callback returns, this receives. So it's going to receive something. Who knows what it is? And let's console log something. Who knows for sure, based on exactly what we just said, what will console log? Who is 100% positive? Cool. Were you right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because the then will receive the return from the previous. Right? And then what can I do? Then it up again. Right? So, promises can go on forever. Do I need to be going past this point? No, because now I have the parse JSON, I have the data that I want, and I can do something with it. Right?
Is the convention just to take one action per then, or could you?
It depends on what you want to do. The first then, conventionally, literally always just parses the JSON and returns it. The second then is when you want to do your, The second then is when you want to do your actual like actions and stuff with the data. Cool? So, as we've learned, give me 2 seconds. As we've learned again, all right, what is parsed JSON object? It's the actual thing I'm like, I should be getting back from the server, and it's currently an array with a string with the Ron Swanson quote, right, in this exact example. Cool? Yes?
My question was, adding on to this question, if we needed multiple steps, say, to get to that particular object, is it best practice to put it in one then? It's like, okay, we parsed it in this string of different things in this function, and now we're going to return it in the way that we want to.
Say again? Sorry.
So like if instead of just having to go to response.json to get the JSON object,
Uh-huh.
if we needed to do multiple things in that function, is it best practice to do then the first part, then the second, then the third, or is it?
No. You should be doing everything in this second then. Yeah. Cool? And I'm hesitant to say that, and I'll show you a bunch of things like why and why not, right? So, cool. Before we move forward, I want to make sure you understand error handling. So there's something, have you seen begin and rescue in Ruby? Okay. For those that haven't, it looks just like this. Begin, rescue, end, right? begin, you try to do some code, right? Like, oh, sorry, it's this one. Some code. And then if that code fails, rescue will run. Rescue, if the error matches, it will do something, right? So let's get rid of this sleep real quick. This is what's going to happen. Have I ever defined hot dog? No, right? Meaning that I'm going to have a unknown variable or method name error. So this rescue is saying if I have a name error inside this code, it's going to do this. So let's take a look. Ready? So I'm just going to Ruby sync again. And it's going to go, haha, saved you right here. What I mean by that is, if I did not have this, and I put hot dog, what would happen? That name error comes up. That's terrible, right? And then what if, as we know, it is synchronous? If I have it here, will the rest of this code run? No, it will not. But if I did this, and then ran it, what will happen? Haha, saved you, and then it continues running. Right? It doesn't just break your code. So, error handling, important. I can simply catch any errors. It's going to receive some sort of error message if it does run, and then it's going to just console log the error. Right? So like right now, this totally works, but if I hit an endpoint that doesn't exist, I think, right, this doesn't exist. Oh gosh. Oh God. Yeah, you can write whatever you want in catch. Oh, did I not close it? All right, we're running short on time, and I don't want to find this stupid. It's the last one? Okay. The point is, it runs just like begin and rescue, right? Like if this somehow failed, it will run the catch. Like all of this, it'll be like, oh, hey, that didn't really work. It'll run the catch, and it'll just spit out the error. Cool? So let's go back and, what was it? Actually, that would have worked fine. Either way. So, I just want to move along, sorry. It's like almost 3, and we gotta like move it along. So great, now I have this parse JSON object, right? It's the array that I'm looking for. Now I can do something to that array. But in Ruby, I can simply do this. Ron Swanson quotes equals this REST client.get. Wouldn't it be great if I can just do const, right? Oh, Ronnie equals to this. And then I just console logged Ronnie. Right? Oh, wait, just kidding. I need to probably return this, right? That would have been a boo-boo. That might have come back as undefined, except it never will. Those promises. Just to make sure we're cool here, this is Ronnie. Returns promise. Right? So I cannot save my data like this from the fetch, like I can in Ruby. Cool? Are there any questions on that? Because the fetch returns a promise. So I'm simply going to be, remember fetch invokes has a return value, and then Ronnie will get that fetch's return value, which is the promise.
Can you save the parse JSON?
Yes. Now we'll get to that later. Cool? So, any questions so far on promises? A bit tricky. Great. So, here what we could do is let us, in here, finally do something to that. And that is, what I want to do, and the functionality of this is going to be, I want to put my quotes here. Do I have a quote?
Yes.
Great, I have the quote, right? It's the parse JSON object. So we know that, right? This is Ron's quote, right? This is Ron's quote right here. We know that. Cool? How can I get it on here? I can query select what? Quotes. Do I want it right on quotes? Do I want to put it under P or under quotes? It's tricky, right? So there's a couple things I can do. I can simply go, hey, in there I'm looking for a P tag. And then I will get the P tag specifically. That's under quotes. But here, for just demonstration purposes to kind of move, I'm going to put it in this div. And then when I append it, it'll go underneath the P tag because it will be at the same level as a child of the P tag. And it'll come out just fine, as opposed to nesting it in the P tag. Cool? So just be mindful of that. All right. Boop, 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 boop. Are there any questions about nesting it inside the P tag versus nesting it under the div, and how that could be like really weird and tricky? No problem. If I append it to quotes, it will be a child of quotes. If I append it to the P tag, it will be a child of the P tag. I do not want it as a child of the P tag, so I want to make sure I append it to quotes. Cool? Does that make sense? Great. So, that's not going to work. So I have this here, and then what I want to do, I can append a child, right? But then I would have to do what? I'd have to create this node element, right? Or I can simply add onto the HTML that already exists. I want to add onto it, not reset it, which would just be this. I want to add onto it. If I add onto it, do I keep the P tag that's there?
Yeah.
If I do this, where's the P tag? Gone, right? Cool. Interesting. So, what do I want to add? Let's just add another P tag, right? And we'll close it, and then we will add what? Ron quote. Is that okay? We can always test, right? Yeah, we want the 0 at some point. Yeah, Ronnie's not fine. Cool. Boom! Breakfast food can serve many purposes. Very good. Fishing relaxes me. It's like yoga. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay? Some of these are, I probably should have looked through all of them first. Either way. Great. Some important things that I want to make clear. Ready? I can simply do this, and that is quotes container equals, right? And then smartly create a global variable. Wrong. Stop the madness, team. Stop the madness, right? And then here I can just do quotes container. But here's the weird thing. Inside this fetch, I'm doing this. Does this need to be inside the fetch? No, of course not. That being said, though, does quotes container exist inside this? Yes, because of scope. Right? So helpful. So when I see fetches and they're like just jarbles and jarbles of logic, and I'm like, yeah, you might want to pull some of that out of the fetch because you don't really need to do it in the fetch. Does that make sense? Yeah, what's up?
Since the fetch returns that promise, is anything like from the events available, like in globally, like in that reverse scope, like there? Does that make sense? My question.
Say again.
The fetch is returning something, so like, is the dot then technically within that fetch since the fetch already returned the promise? Like you go out of that scope of the fetch?
Do I go out of the scope of the fetch to what?
to the, to like a global, once the fetch returns a promise,
Yeah.
doing the dot then, but you're still within the fetch.
The dot then is a special like function
Right.
that will, it's like a callback to the fetch. I'm appending it saying that once this fetch resolves, I'm going to be doing this with that data when it's in that web API, sort of making that request off the call stack, but not yet into the event queue.
Right, so you're still technically within the fetch scope.
This right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you mean by fetch scope?
Like, I guess you're within the fetch.
I'm still in the fetch, yeah. Because the whole fetch gets passed into the web API, and then it gets called back with a callback in the event loop. All right. Are there any questions on how to write a fetch, doing something with that data, and then how it runs differently and non-blocking in JavaScript? This is like intro, basic stuff. Yes, sir.
This is the last step that's going to be right? Like in terms of stuff when we learn for the code challenge.
No.
Not on code challenge, or
This is not the last of it,
okay.
meaning there will be more. Cool? Sorry. Sorry I want you to learn JavaScript. My bad.
So just double check that I get this right. If you put sleep in a fetch method, it would mean that it will not slow down the code because it will run minus.
It will run when it hits here. The fetch will still return immediately, a promise. Because this is a callback. This won't execute until the data resolves from this URL. And you mean this built-in sleep, right? Not like an organic sleep. Okay, yes, yes. Thank you for that. You should all try practicing that. It's like, hey, I think I understand, but getting the practice of explaining it out loud, especially to either each other or back to one of us, is the best way to know whether or not you understand it. So, plus plus.
Response.
Yes.
In the argument response.
Yes.
Can you just tell me what that is again? It was
This is the response that comes back from here, which I will need to parse into the JSON in the same way that Ron Swanson quote response is what comes back from here. It's a object that I can't really read until I parse. Yeah?
Oh, right, because it's just an object. I actually, at first I didn't understand why they made it a hash in Ruby, but I understand now. It's confusing.
Bet it up. Cool. If there are one more
And
question.
Once it's parsed, you might do one thing there, and then you get the dot.
Absolutely not. I'm going to parse it, and then I'm going to do something with it. That's the convention, right? If you see anything in here, it will be very advanced level JavaScript. I don't think I've ever seen anything in here. Because you can't really do anything here. You have to return the JSON and then do something with it. Yeah. Yep. Awesome. Great. So remember, fetch will run asynchronously. So this will actually come up before this. Yeah? So if I console log something in here, what would come first? This console log or 33? Who says 33? Who says this one? Okay. Okay, great. I feel better about ending the lecture. Great. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much.